Whether thou art a ghost that hath come from the earth, or a phantom of night that hath no home, or one that lieth dead in the desert, or a ghost unburied, or a demon, or a ghoul, whatever thou be until thou art removed, thou shalt find here no water to drink. Thou shalt not stretch forth thy hand to our own. Into our house enter thou not. Through our fence break through thou not. We are protected, though we may be frightened. Our life you may not steal, though we may be scared to death.
Welcome to Scared to Death, Creeps, Peepers, Roberts, and Annabelles. I'm Dan.
And I'm Lulu Marie.
She's sticking with Lulu Marie.
I love it. It makes me so happy.
We have 2 announcements, and then we will jump into the stories.
Okay, yes. Lots going on this episode, so please be sure to listen to all announcements. First of all, we wanted to say thank you to every single fan who reached out and expressed their concern and their condolences for the event that occurred here in Coeur d'Alene on Sunday, June 29th. We record several weeks in advance, so by the time you hear this, it may not even be top of mind for you, but in our community, it absolutely still will be. On Sunday, June 29th, there was a horrific shooting on Canfield Mountain here in Coeur d'Alene in which 2 firefighters lost their lives, and we send our love and our deepest condolences to the family of Battalion Chief Frank Harwood and Battalion Chief John Morrison. I've also been keeping in touch with a family friend of firefighter and engineer David Tisdall, who's in the hospital fighting for his life. Our July donation was already committed to, and we'd already notified that nonprofit that they would be receiving funds. And in light of that, we will be donating to some, nonprofit or whatever kind of pops up from what has happened here in Coeur d'Alene. We're just, waiting for the advice and guidance from a friend of ours who's a local firefighter and was there during the event, who is safe, but he is our touch point on this. So again, thank you so much for, just reaching out, making sure that we were okay, and then again, expressing your support for our community.
Mm-hmm.
And then on to the July charitable donation. This month, we're going to be donating to Ignite Adaptive Sports. Ignite Adaptive Sports is on a mission to provide snow sport opportunities to people with disabilities. They believe that everyone should be able to enjoy winter sports, regardless of skill or ability. They're a volunteer-based organization that provides snow sport lessons to athletes with disabilities out of the Eldora Mountain Resort. In 2024, they had 320 volunteers give over 22,000 hours of their time and provided over 1,600 snow sport lessons to over 400 athletes. They provide sit skiing lessons, cross country, snow biking. It's really cool. And they solely rely on grants and donations and the mountain to provide this much needed service. Dan and I had the pleasure of meeting Sam Brady, who works with this nonprofit. And Sam was sharing that it's run by all volunteers except for 2 paid members. And while they typically would receive funding for disabled veterans to be able to participate at no cost, due to DEI and budget cuts, it's not looking good. So Sam asked if we'd be interested in supporting this cause, in supporting disabled people, especially disabled veterans, and we jumped at the cause.
Yep.
So if you'd like to learn more, you can visit igniteadaptivesports.org.
Uh-huh. All right. Well, thanks for listening to those, Creeps and Peepers. And now in the interest of, time, since we spoke a little more up front, we're going to skip the previews this week, jump right into Lynze's spoopy socks, and then off into the horror.
I have the coziest. That's literally, this brand is called World's Softest. I have these adorable white, knee-high tube sock looking guys with little hearts on them, and they're very cozy.
And here we go, jumping straight into this first story. I'm very excited about both my stories this week. Hope you love this as much as I do. Time now for the tale of the Watseka Wonder. Imagine your 13-year-old daughter waking up one morning not quite feeling like herself. She's talking to people who aren't there. She's describing the afterlife in great detail. And perhaps strangest of all, she is claiming to be someone else entirely. Someone who is no longer alive. Now imagine watching as this other person, a long-dead teenage girl, slowly seems to completely take over your child's body and mind. Would you believe your daughter had gone insane? Or would you believe she had become possessed? This is exactly the terrifying question one family in Watseka, Illinois, had to face well over a century ago now, in the late 1800s. The year was 1877, and the Venom family lived in the quiet town of Watseka, about 90 miles south of Chicago, a town of around 1,500 people at the time. Like many farming communities of the era, It was a very conservative place, steeped in old-world Christian values, but also a growing curiosity about spiritualism, which had become a national obsession in the wake of the Civil War. And in July of that year, 13-year-old Lynze Venom, the youngest of 7 children, began having terrifying fits. One morning, Lynze screamed for her mother, her body shaking uncontrollably. When her mother ran over to check on her, she watched her daughter's eyes roll back into her head, and she saw the young girl slump down to the ground, seemingly catatonic. Her mother, of course, was overcome with worry, afraid that her daughter was caught in the throes of some terrible seizure, one that could very well be a symptom of some life-threatening affliction. But then her eyes rolled back down, and she appeared lucid again. She'd returned. And when she had come to, she said that she had been floating above her bed, watching angels. Then she said something even stranger, something that upset her mother more in a way than watching her little girl lose control of her body. She quietly reported, "I saw my brother and sister. They were waiting for me." Both of the siblings her mother determined she was talking about were dead. The Venoms were rattled, but assumed/hoped it was nothing more than a bad dream. Could bad dreams cause someone to act physically like they'd witnessed with Lynze? They didn't know, but they tried to convince themselves they could. Soon, it happened again, and again, and again. And each episode, it grew worse. Before long, Lynze was experiencing more than visions of angels and her dead siblings. She was slipping into trances where she would speak in different voices. At times, she didn't seem to recognize her own family. At other times, she claimed to be in heaven. And even when she wasn't in the midst of struggling with whatever this was, she behaved strangely. One day she told her parents, "Don't cry for me. I'm much happier when I'm not here." Not long after uttering, that unnerving statement, Lynze's episodes grew still more intense. Sometimes she'd laugh manically, then weep uncontrollably. Sometimes she'd speak in tongues or hide from unseen, quote, monsters. More than once, she tried to harm herself. Worried for their daughter's safety, the Venoms brought in some doctors to examine her, and she would soon be declared insane. They said she suffered from an epileptic mania, and they advised her parents to send her to one of the area's many large asylums, popular around this time for housing people no one knew quite what to do with. The Venoms were about to follow the doctor's advice, but just before they did, someone intervened, and this story took a wild and unexpected turn. A man named Asa Roth, a local elder in town, heard about the Venoms' plight and came to their home. Asa explained that his own daughter, Mary Roth, had once experienced something eerily similar. Strange trances, voices, talk of the afterlife. This had went on for years, and Mary had been committed to an asylum, where she died 12 years earlier at the age of 18, after cutting both her arms in a fit of madness that led to her bleeding to death. Asa, heartbroken and desperate to understand what had happened to her, had become heavily involved in the growing spiritualist movement, and now believed that the soul could survive death and even in some cases return to commune with the living. He pleaded with the Venoms not to institutionalize Lynze. He begged them to allow a, quote, spirit doctor to examine her first. Not exactly eager to have their beloved daughter committed, and with few other options, they agreed. And now an unusual man, named Dr. E. Winchester Stevens, entered the picture, a spiritualist physician from Janesville, Wisconsin. The Venoms welcomed Dr. Stevens into their home, and he began documenting every interaction he had with Lynze. He quickly noted that when she entered her trances, she often seemed totally unaware of her surroundings, that her voice would change substantially, her posture would shift. She would then refer to herself by other names: Katrina Hogan, Willie Canning, and Mary Roth. That Mary Roth. He also noted that when Asa Roth visited the Venom home, Lynze's entire demeanor changed dramatically. Her face lit up. She stared at him adoringly. She reached for him like a daughter would, and she'd whisper things like, "Papa, I'm home." The Roth family became convinced that Mary had returned to them through Lynze, and soon so did many others. Mary, speaking through Lynze, recognized old family friends by name before they had been reintroduced to her. She knew exactly where the Roths had stored various specific items in their home. She remembered childhood nicknames of the various Roth children and even recalled the names of their old pets. Many of the details she shared were so specific, so intimate, they would obviously be completely unknown to someone like Lynze. And then, Lynze, aka Mary, made a bold request. She asked if she could go home. The Roffs asked the Venoms if Mary could come live with them, and incredibly, the Venoms agreed. That's how thoroughly convincing all of this was. This family so wholeheartedly believed that their daughter was possessed by the spirit of a dead girl that they allowed their daughter to go live with the dead girl's family, people who had been complete and total strangers prior to Asa Roff's first visit. What followed was something out of a gothic horror novel, a macabre spiritual reunion between a dead daughter and her still living family through the borrowed body of another family's child. For nearly 15 weeks, nearly 4 months, Lynze, now consistently only referring to herself as Mary, lived with the Roffs as if she had truly returned from the dead. She even asked to visit Mary's grave and wept quietly at the side of her own tombstone. Dr. Stevens wrote, "In every respect, she was Mary, and in every respect, the girl known as Lynze was gone." Neighbors who had once scoffed at various paranormal claims now whispered that the Roffs had somehow truly brought their daughter back from the grave. And now for another very strange twist in this very strange story. In May of 1878, Mary announced to her family that her time on Earth was once again coming to an end. She said Lynze's soul was healthy and ready to return to her body. Her final words to the Roffs were both calm and heartbreaking. "I came to do a work of love, but now I must go." She tearfully hugged them one by one. She reiterated her goodbye, then asked to be left alone so she could go to sleep. The next morning, Lynze awoke, confused but peaceful. She no longer remembered the Roff family. She no longer remembered anything that had occurred over the past 4 months. She also no longer started to slip into trances. Her seizures, or whatever you'd call them, stopped altogether. She was, by all accounts, a completely physically and mentally healthy young girl again, and she would remain that way. Lynze would go on to live a long life. She would get married, have children of her own, and move away from Watseka to raise her own family. She allegedly never had another episode again in all of her days. So what happened? To this day, the story of the so-called Watseka Wonder is considered by many spiritualists to be the first well-documented case of possession in American history. Skeptics argue it was nothing more than mental illness, or perhaps the power of suggestion, that Lynze was especially empathetic and impressionable, that the Roffs projected their grief onto her, and that she simply played the role expected of her. However, even a number of modern psychologists who have looked into the details of this case have had to admit the sheer number of details, names, objects, emotional connections, memories of people, places, and events that Lynze should have no awareness of, but was able to recall perfectly, very hard to explain. How could a 13-year-old girl in 1878 with no access to Mary Roff's personal history have known what she seemed to have known? What is it possible that the soul of Mary Roff found a way back, if only for a little while? And now before we leave the strange story, I'd like to share 2 brief modern encounter claims that certainly seem to be closely related to the story. The first supposedly true encounter was posted anonymously by someone who claims to have grown up just outside of Watseka. They say they visited the Watseka Historical Society in 2014, where a small room had been reconstructed with furniture from the original Roff home. It was a rainy Saturday, they wrote. The museum was nearly empty. I wandered into the Roff room and immediately felt like someone else was already there. They claim the hairs on their arms stood up the moment they stepped through the doorway. The small antique bed creaked even though no one sat on it, and that in the corner of the room just behind a worn rocking chair they saw movement. I swear to God, I saw a pale girl, maybe 14, in a faded nightgown, barely peeking around the chair. They said they thought it was a trick of the light until they saw the chair slowly begin to rock. They turned to leave, but something made them glance back. They claimed the girl was still there, but now she was smiling. Her lips didn't move, but I heard her voice in my head. She said, "You're not supposed to be here." They claimed they fled the room, and when they then asked the volunteer at the front if anyone else had reported anything strange, the woman reportedly replied, "Oh, you saw Mary, did you?" The next claim comes from someone who lived in a converted apartment building in Watseka that sits on what used to be farmland near the original Venom property. They posted their story under the name of Cassie, and Cassie wrote that she moved in during the pandemic, and that she'd never heard of the Watseka Wonder. But she wrote, strange things began happening almost immediately. She posted, "My cat refused to go into the back bedroom. Every time I walked in, I'd feel almost dizzy. One night I found my own journal open on my desk, and something had been added to a page I had written the day before. It was a different handwriting. Just 2 words. Let me." Cassie obviously became extremely curious about what was going on. She started to research the history of the town. She eventually discovered the Watseka Wonder case online, and with a mix of excitement and fear, decided to host a seance with 2 friends to try and get some answers. They used a pendulum and asked basic yes-no questions. When they asked if anyone was present, the pendulum swung hard. Then they asked, "Are you Mary Roth?" The pendulum immediately stopped, then slowly began swinging in the other direction. "No," it indicated. They asked next, "Are you Lynze?" It stopped again. Cassie says that just then her friend screamed and she pointed at Cassie's chest. "You're bleeding," she said. Cassie looked down. A thin red line had appeared on her collarbone, like a paper cut. Then another, then another. They both jumped up, Cassie turned on the lights, and then ended the session. Later that night, Cassie claimed she woke up gasping, convinced someone was standing over her. She reportedly saw a face, a girl's face, weeping. And she said she heard a whisper directly into her ear, "I never wanted to come back." Cassie claims she had her apartment saged, and that since, nothing further has happened. Whether you believe in possession, spiritualism, or just the power of grief and suggestion, the story of the Watseka Wonder has endured for nearly 150 years. A child, a spirit, a borrowed life. And maybe even now, there's a soul or 2, or maybe something else entirely, still lingering unnaturally in Watseka, wondering which body to borrow next.
I love this story.
Me too.
It's so weird. Maybe I love it because it has a more positive overtone.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's creepy and it's strange, but it's also incredible. What
4 months.
What if, okay, truly,
Yeah.
I die. And then
Uh-huh.
you hear about some local woman
Oh my God.
who's just like
claiming to be you or something? Or
claiming to be Lulu Marie. Like, what if she knows? That's the thing that got me. It's like, she knows the family. She knows the pets. I mean, it's like essentially saying like, I know the inside jokes. I know where we keep the china. I don't know. Like, just, like things that are only relevant to you and your life and maybe your partner or your family, or if you must live in this house to know, like, where do we keep the extra dog food? Like those little things. This is a crazy, crazy story.
I know. It does make me think like how powerful that would be if
oh my God.
Every couple in this situation, every parent and child, they have like, little core memories that are very important to them that they haven't shared publicly, that only like they would really know the intricate details of.
Yeah.
And if somebody knew those things, like you have your quirks, and if
me? Did you just indicate that I'm quirky?
Yeah, you're very quirky. And if somebody like certain tics and things that you did, and they knew all of those. And I just had that interaction. I'm like, oh my God, there's no way this person would know where that was in our house.
Totally.
Like, we've never talked about it on the podcast, never shared it. I don't even think about it. They
Right.
know. And then on, multiple ones. My God, that would be such a powerful life experience. You'd never be the same. Like, in a good way.
Yeah, like I just think about like little inside family jokes, like meatball or, right? Like 2 + 2 is 5, these little like, which of course, if you guys listening, you're like, what? Okay, whatever that means. But everybody has those.
Yep.
It would be incredible if it was what if we knew throughout our living lives that after we die, we got like a 4-month
oh my God
redo, or
if this was common.
I don't think respite is the right word, but like, no, because that's a break. Well, yeah, like a 4-month respite from the other side. So like, what if you got to come back? Because what is the thing that everyone says? Like, if only I'd had one more moment, if only I'd known. Like, there's all these things. Inevitably, to some degree, we live with some
regrets
guilt,
or whatever.
Regret, just like, I wish I would have.
Yeah.
What if we all like got a chance?
And how crazy for all of us knowing that like knowing that our bodies were going to be just taken over for a few months at some point in our life.
Whoa.
That's crazy.
That'd be wild. Also, for a minute at the beginning, my first note was like, Was she possessed or is she just being a teenager? Because teenagers
I
become
know.
totally different people.
I know, I saw you
They're
smile.
Little shits. Any teenagers listening, be nice to your parents. They're trying their best. You're not easy. Even when you're a great kid, it's hard. It's hard.
Uh-huh.
It's a very transitional time.
And also, parents, be easy on your teens because their brains are going through so much.
Oh my God, their brains are not developed all the way. They're not actually trying to give you hell.
Yeah, not
they
often.
literally can't help it.
Here's some pictures. This first one's an old portrait of Lynze Venom, just via Wikipedia.
Okay.
And the next one, Mary Roth.
By the way, great name, Lynze Venom.
I know. I think she may have went by Lucy for short, but I've never heard Lynze to my recollection.
Me either, but I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Venom, like that's a great name.
I know. Yeah, Vennum, but pronounced like the poison adjacent. Yeah, Venom. Yeah. And then this is a photo of the opening pages of a story written about the Watseka Wonder back in 1908. Published in a book called Historic Ghosts and Ghost Hunters by Henry Addington Bailey Bruce.
What a name.
I know. Everybody threw in their middle names back then. It was like fashionable, I guess.
It's very cool. The more names probably.
They had a lot of them had two middle names. A lot of them had a title, like the third, or
sign me
up. Throw in like Esquire or.
Can I be like Lindsay Marie, Faith, Lulu Marie? You probably have to skip the first Marie. You can't have two Maries in one name.
Funny, I don't like it. I feel like I would just push back the other way, and I'm like, I'd want to change my last name to one syllable somehow, just to have
you just
Dan,
become Prince. You're just one name. You're just Dan, and you refuse to make it something really unique and cool. You just stick with Dan.
And then this is a photo of the Roth house where Mary
really
lived in life.
Beautiful house.
Yeah, it is.
Is that a current-ish photo?
This next one is they just did a huge restoration in 2020.
Yeah.
This photo's from hauntedus.b-cdn.net. This next one's from landmarks.org because it got added to the list of National Historic Places.
Uh-huh. Wow.
And it's beautiful. Yeah, they just finished the renovation in 2020, like a really painstaking, renovation to make it like it was when it was originally built.
I would love to live in a house that looked like that.
I know, it's so cool.
It's so, so pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
it really
man.
is. It really is. Just so solid.
Gosh dang.
And that's all I have for that one.
I loved that. And
me too.
Yeah.
It was a good find.
Yeah. And it's spooky and creepy, but it also has a nice, again, positive overtone.
Yeah.
And then just one other thing. Funny, I was cracking myself up over here.
Okay.
I was like, okay, you should always trust animals, because one of the modern encounter stories, she was like, my cat, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So I wrote down, you should always trust animals except for Ginger Belle. Our Ginger.
She's an anxious little thing.
She's anxious. And she just stares into space. She stares out windows, but there's nothing going on outside. She looks like she might have been dropped on her head a time or two.
There might not be much going on inside her head.
Or she's a freaking genius and she's overwhelmed with anxiety because of how smart she is.
We go back and forth if she's dumb as a rock or highly intelligent.
Oh, Dee Dee. So don't trust her. It's like, if they say when bad weather is coming, the animals will run, to the highest ground.
Dee Dee.
Not Dee Dee.
Oh, Dee Dee.
She'd be like, where's the bell? Where's the ball? Just take me to the ball.
At least she's cute.
Oh, God bless her.
Are you ready to leave Illinois and head to England?
Oh, yeah.
In my opinion, some of the best, scariest ghost stories are the ones that claim to be absolutely 100% true, even when they are absolutely 100% not true. Not talking about the type of stories we tell here on Scared to Death. I'm talking about a subgenre of paranormal fiction. Even when we know that the novel we're about to read or the horror movie we're about to watch is totally fabricated, the tagline of based on true events still sends shivers down the spine, doesn't it? Our better judgment gets overshadowed by our apprehension. Even though we know it's not, when a ghost story claims to be at least partially true, it automatically becomes that much more horrifying. And for the last 300 or so years, various fictional authors have been using this to their advantage. Since the birth of Gothic horror in the 18th century, a great number of authors have been stamping their ghost stories with this mark of authenticity to inject it with that little extra dose of terror. And for a long time, a true relation of the apparition of Mrs. Veal, written in 1706 by none other than Daniel Defoe, author of Robinson Crusoe, a book second in translations only to the Bible in the world, was considered to be the first ghost story to use this tactic. In A True Relation, the narrator describes an investigation he conducted into a haunting in Canterbury, England. The story begins with an old-timey version of based on a true story. This story is matter of fact, writes Defoe in the preface, and it recounts such circumstances with such evidence as will induce any reasonable man to believe it. Since its publication, A True Relation has gone down in history as, quote, the first modern ghost story and an incredibly important work of fiction. But recently, some historians have begun to claim it was never a work of fiction at all. As one source puts it, although earlier critiques assumed Defoe invented the whole story as a sales gimmick to sell his other theological work, it is now known that some such paranormal incident took place, received a certain amount of local publicity, and that Defoe himself went down to Canterbury to interview the chief witness at her home. In such, A True Relation is actually an example of Daniel Defoe's journalism rather than his fiction. So with the knowledge that this ghost story is actually based on true events, not just claiming to be, let's dive into it. For listeners who are familiar with this story, it's going to sound a bit different than you're used to because we've edited the language and vernacular a bit to fit better with a modern audience. Time now for the tale of A True Relation of an Apparition. This story is matter of fact, and it recounts such circumstances with such evidence as will induce any reasonable man to believe in its veracity. I first learned of this story from a gentleman, a justice of peace, from Maidstone in Kent. The gentleman is a very intelligent person whose word can be trusted to the utmost degree. With sober understanding, he conveyed to me, a short while back, that a mutual friend of ours had undergone an extraordinary event. The friend in question is a woman named Mrs. Bargrave. I myself have been well acquainted with Mrs. Bargrave for 15 years. The gentleman has known her for much longer, as she is the neighbor of his aunt who raised him. Both the gentleman and his aunt are of a discerning spirit, not at all the type to be put upon by any fallacy, and they both attest to the reality of the incident. Based on their testimonies and those of their neighbors, I can positively assure the reader that the whole matter, as I have written it out, is really true. As for Mrs. Bargrave herself, she has no reason to invent and publish such a story. No benefit can be gained by the forging and telling of this lie for the woman who is of much honesty and virtue. The story is so rare in all its circumstances and is attested to by such high authorities and intellects that it is fit to gratify the most ingenious, serious, and skeptical inquirer. Mrs. Bargrave is the person to whom Mrs. Veal appeared after her death. She is my intimate friend, and I can vouch for her reputation for these last 15 or 16 years on my own knowledge, and I can confirm the good character she had from her youth to the time of my acquaintance. Though, since this relation, she has been defamed and gossiped about by some people that are friends to the brother of this Mrs. Veal, these people endeavor what they can to blast Mrs. Bargrave's reputation and to laugh the story out of countenance. But by the circumstances thereof and the cheerful disposition of Mrs. Bargrave, notwithstanding the ill usage of a very wicked husband, there is not yet the least sign of dejection in her face. Nor did I ever hear her let fall a desponding or murmuring expression. Nay, not when actually under her husband's barbarity, which I have been witness to, and several other persons of undoubted reputation. Now you must know, Mrs. Veal was a gentlewoman of about 30 years of age, and for some years past had been troubled with ill health and fits of mania. She was cared for only by her brother. She was a very pious woman, and her brother a very sober man to all appearance. But now he does all he can to null or quash the story. Mrs. Veal and Mrs. Bargrave had known each other since childhood. Mrs. Veal was raised by a negligent father who scarcely provided food and clothing for his children. Mrs. Bargrave in those days also had an unkind father, but unlike her friend, she wanted neither for food nor clothing. They would often console each other's adverse fortunes. They comforted each other under their sorrow. They were, by all accounts, the closest and most intimate of friends, and they remained so far into adulthood. That was until about 3 years ago, when Mrs. Veal's brother got a job in Dover, which occasioned Mrs. Veal to move away with him. Though there were never any such thing as a fight between them, and indifference came on by degrees, till the two women had not seen each other in 2 years and a half, with Mrs. Veal in Dover with her caretaker brother, and Mrs. Bargrave dwelling in a house of her own in Canterbury. It was in this house, on the 8th of September, 1705, that Mrs. Bargrave was sitting alone in the forenoon, taking up her sewing work, when she heard a knock at the front door. She went to see who was there and was shocked to find on the other side of the door Mrs. Veal, her old friend, in horseback riding clothes with a blank expression on her face. At that moment of time, the clock struck 12 at noon. "Madam," said Mrs. Bargrave, "I am surprised to see you. You have been so long a stranger, but oh, how glad I am to see you." The two women embraced, and Mrs. Bargrave couldn't help but notice how cold her friend was. despite the unseasonably hot weather. When they pulled apart, she noticed furthermore how deeply grave and confused she looked. Before Mrs. Bargrave could ask her old friend what was ailing her, Mrs. Veal spoke abruptly, in a soft voice. "I am to depart on a journey, but I have a great desire to see you before I go." She seemed ill-equipped to say more on the subject of her journey, so Mrs. Bargrave simply welcomed her in, telling her to take a seat in the great elbow chair adjacent to her own. No sooner had they sat down than Mrs. Veal spoke once again. "My dear friend," she said, still looking quite a bit lost, "I have come to renew our old friendship and to beg your pardon for my breach of it. And if you can forgive me, you are the best of humankind." "Oh," said Mrs. Bargrave, "do not mention such a thing. I have not had an uneasy thought about it. I can easily forgive it." Then Mrs. Veal reminded Mrs. Bargrave of the many wonderful memories they shared, even in times of hardship, what books they read, what fantasies they imagined for their futures. They spoke of other subjects too. Mrs. Veal told Mrs. Bargrave that her sister and her brother-in-law, who she called a mad fellow, had just traveled from London to Dover to see her, but she did not care for their company. Mrs. Veal also shared a secret with Mrs. Bargrave that not even her dear brother knew. A distant and wealthy relation named Mr. Breton had been bestowing upon Mrs. Veal £10 per year in order to ensure she is taken care of in case her brother neglects to. As they were reminiscing on their friendship, Mrs. Veal said contentedly, "Dear Mrs. Bargrave, I shall love you forever." Then after a brief pause, her tone suddenly changed. Her face grew dark, serious, and determined. And in a severe manner, Mrs. Veal asked Mrs. Bargrave to write a letter to her brother in Dover on her behalf. And then before Mrs. Bargrave could even obtain writing materials, or even agree to the endeavor, Mrs. Veal began reciting the things she needed conveyed in the letter. Very personal, private things, like what mourning rings she wished to be bestowed upon such and such persons, where she'd hidden the key to the cabinet in her chambers, where she'd hidden a purse of gold coins within that cabinet, and how much coin should be allotted to her dear cousin Watson and his family. Her words were confusing, not only because of the rapid and urgent tone in which she spoke them, but because of their implication. They were instructions for what to do when she was dead. Mrs. Bargrave began to think her friend's rant was a symptom of impending mania or a fit of ill health. She wanted to protest, but she could not get a word in edgewise. All she could do was move her own chair directly in front of Mrs. Veal's to keep her from falling to the ground if her fit should occasion it. Mrs. Bargrave tried to divert Mrs. Veal by asking her about her silk gown, but it was no use. Mrs. Veal persisted in her requests and told Mrs. Bargrave that she must not be denied. The letter to her brother needed to be written, and Mrs. Bargrave needed to be the one to write it. "Why?" asked Mrs. Bargrave. "Why do you not write the letter yourself?" "No," said Mrs. Veal, "you must write it. Though it seems strange to you now, you will see more reason for it hereafter." Mrs. Bargrave sighed, then rose to her feet, announcing she would go fetch a pen and ink. But then, to her surprise and alarm, Mrs. Veal suddenly rose as well and gripped her arm tightly, refusing to let her go. No, let it alone now," whispered Mrs. Veal, frantically looking about her surroundings, appearing once again quite confused. Her eyes finally met Mrs. Bargrave's. "Write the letter when I am gone, but you must be sure to do it. Oh, you must. Mrs. Veal burst into a fit of tears. Her friend consoled her with the guarantee her promise would be fulfilled. She would write the letter on the morrow. When her tears subsided, Mrs. Veal once again rose to her feet, as a person does when they realize how late the hour has gotten. In a hushed, agonized tone, she said, "I must go now," and began walking towards the door. Mrs. Bargrave asked why she was in such haste. Perhaps she might stay a while and join her for dinner and tea. But Mrs. Veal waved the offer away, mumbling that she really must be going, though perhaps she might not begin her journey until Monday. But no, truly, she must be going now. "I'm saddened that I must go," Mrs. Veal said when she was on the other side of the door. "But I hope to see you again at my cousin Watson's before I go whither I must." Mrs. Bargrave watched her friend take leave down the street towards the market until she was no longer visible. This was at 1:15 in the afternoon. The day after her reunion with Mrs. Veal, Mrs. Bargrave awoke mightily indisposed with a cold and a sore throat, so she could not go out at all. This was very aggravating to Mrs. Bargrave, as she had planned to call upon the estate of Mrs. Veal's cousin to confirm that her friend had indeed arrived there safely the day prior. Alas, the endeavor had to wait until the following day, which was September 10th, 1705. On that day, Mrs. Bargrave sent a person to Captain Watson's to discover if Mrs. Veal was there. Captain Watson and his family were puzzled by the inquiry because, as they relayed in their message back to Mrs. Bargrave, Mrs. Veal was not there, nor was she expected to be. As far as they had been informed, Mrs. Veal was still back in Dover with her brother. Though she was ill upon receiving this news, Mrs. Bargrave put on her hood and went herself to Captain Watson's in search of answers. When she arrived, they repeated the same information as before. They said they wondered at her inquiry, for Mrs. Veal had not been in town. They were sure if she had, she would have been there. Mrs. Bargrave told them that she had spent nearly 2 hours with Mrs. Veal on September 8th, just 2 days prior, and that she had said she was going to their estate next. Captain Watson shook his head and said that was absolutely impossible, for if Mrs. Veal was in Canterbury, he and his family would have seen her, and if she had plans to visit Canterbury, he and his family would have received word ahead of time. While they were in dispute, one of the maids suddenly appeared to tell Captain Watson that there was a messenger at the door calling upon him. Captain Watson had disappeared with the maid for a few minutes, leaving Mrs. Bargrave alone with his confused wife and children. When he finally returned, he looked extremely solemn. Mrs. Bargrave, he announced, was certainly mistaken, for what she claimed was impossible, and now he had the proof. She could not have visited with Mrs. Veal on September 8th because, as he had just been informed, Mrs. Veal had in fact died 3 days prior on September 7th, and Mrs. Bargrave fainted. When she came to, she cried in mourning and bewilderment, then launched once again into telling her story. Captain Watson remained silent as Mrs. Bargrave again related every detail she could remember about her meeting with Mrs. Veal on September 8th, what they spoke about, where they sat, what they drank, how Mrs. Veal looked, how she felt, how her hair was done, how she was dressed. It was at that Mrs. Bargrave was interrupted by Mrs. Watson, the captain's wife, who cried out, "Pray tell us again what sort of gown Mrs. Veal was wearing." Mrs. Bargrave did as she was told and explained every minor detail she could remember of her friend's silk gown. The striped pattern of the bodice, the pleating in the skirt, the small tear on the left sleeve which had been mended with a light blue string. Again Mrs. Watson cried out, "You have seen her indeed, for that is the very gown I helped make up for her last year, and the blue string that was my doing when my dear child ripped the sleeve. Oh, truly, you have seen her in death." This story Mrs. Watson blazed all about the town and vouched for the truth of the incident. Mrs. Bargrave really had seen Mrs. Veal's apparition. Captain Watson, too, came to believe in the facts of the tale, after he brought 2 scholars from London to interrogate Mrs. Bargrave, to hear the relation out of her own mouth. When the interview was done, all 3 men were convinced she had spoken with a dead woman. Soon word spread that gentlemen and persons of quality and intellect, persons of judicious and skeptical minds, were satisfied with the truth of the thing. Mrs. Bargrave was so flocked with curious interviewers, she was forced to leave town to escape the tumult. Despite rumors of her profiting off of her commotion, in reality Mrs. Bargrave suffered greatly during this period. She was not a person who reveled in attention, and the scant notoriety she gained made her very uncomfortable. She never accepted any money for the sale of her story and declined to convert it into book form. "I would not," Mrs. Bargrave once told me, "give 1 guinea to make anyone believe my story. I have no interest in it. Guinea, I guess, to make one, nothing but trouble has entailed me upon since it was made public, for aught I know, and had it not come to light by accident, it would never have told a soul. It would be my own joy, knowing my oldest and dearest friend spoke to me words of kindness and love from the great beyond." Mrs. Bargrave never varied in her story, which puzzles those who doubt the truth of it or are unwilling to believe it. But that is the most minute piece of evidence amongst all the rest that has been discovered. According to Mr. Veal and the attending clinicians present at the time, when he asked his sister on her deathbed whether she had any possessions she wished to be disposed of in a certain way, she said she had nothing. It was only after Mr. Veal heard Mrs. Hargrave's story and followed the instruction given to her by the apparition of his sister did he find the key to the cabinet Mrs. Veal had hidden, and subsequently her secret pouch of gold. Additionally, when Mr. Breton heard the rumor that the ghost of Mrs. Veal told Mrs. Bargrave that he had allotted the woman £10 per year, he wrote to Mrs. Bargrave, he wrote to Captain Watson, and wrote to the brother of the departed to confirm that that was in fact true, though none but himself and Mrs. Veal were aware of that arrangement. It was also confirmed that Mrs. Veal's sister and brother-in-law, the one she described as a mad fellow, had indeed unexpectedly come to Dover the day before Mrs. Veal died, just like she said. "This thing has very much affected me, and I am as well satisfied that it is a matter of fact," Defoe wrote, "and why we should dispute matters of fact simply because it does not fall in line with the laws of earth we deem certain seems strange to me. The truth is this. Mrs. Veal died the 7th of September at 12 o'clock noon in Dover, and the very next day, on the 8th of September at 12 o'clock noon in Canterbury, the dead Mrs. Veal went to visit an old friend. What we ought to make of this story, therefore, is simply that there is no death and there are no dead.
I mean, I think there's death.
But I like what he's saying there.
Yeah. I love that last line about, like, you know, just because we don't understand it, because it doesn't fit in the rules that we have arbitrarily designated to life, doesn't mean that other things aren't true. Just because it doesn't fit within those preconceived notions.
Totally. And if your consciousness does indeed carry on, then there is no death.
Yeah.
There's just a transformation.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Who knows?
A very exciting possibility.
Only exciting if you can control when you come back, how much you come back. Like, I don't want to, I was thinking still about the first story, and I was like, man, what if you do have the opportunity to come back and you have to possess somebody else? Maybe there's like weird rules about, like, they have to be the same gender as you. Or like assigned the same gender at birth. And then what if like they have to be like the same race as you? And then what if they have to be like in your age range? And so you just keep getting all these qualifiers that narrow your options.
Yeah.
And then what if you're just like, well, fuck. My only option is like to either just stay over here on the dead side and let it all go, or I have to possess like this piece of crap because they fit the criteria. I was like, having all these funny things about I don't want to come back like in a serial killer's body.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I want to come back as like, some other nice Lulu.
Well, how great would that be if you could come back in a serial killer's body, though, and then you could at least, turn them in.
Well, no, because then it's like I want to get to my family. Like, it's like now, oh, great. So now I've possessed the body of somebody that's in prison. This is not great for me. This is no fun. Now, how they're just gonna say this person's crazy. They're just mentally ill. They're just trying to get out of prison. I'm not gonna actually get to physically reunite with my family.
Yeah, my brain did not go there.
I'm immediately thinking of the rules and stipulations.
I have a few pictures. Nothing exciting. But just like a picture of Daniel Defoe.
Wow. Okay. Nice hair, buddy.
I know, the wigs they wore back then. This is from the National Maritime Museum in London. Exact date it was created, exactly who painted it is unknown.
It's like a landing strip on his head.
Oh, they had, high society.
Good Lord.
In England in those days, they had very, very fancy wigs.
Whatever. If they saw us now, they would be like, what in
disgusted.
God's green earth is going on? Ripped jeans, leggings.
All the tattoos, they'd be like, these cretins.
Oh, that'd be so funny.
Here's this next one. Here's the title page from the first edition of the pamphlet via Wikipedia.
Cool.
Here's an aerial view of the city of Canterbury from a Lonely Planet article. I just think it's just an adorable town.
So pretty.
It's so pretty. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And I thought this was cool. Canterbury home to so many museums, art galleries, historical buildings like the Canterbury Cathedral and schools, and the King's School in the city, which is attached to Canterbury Cathedral. It's a school for like 13 to 18-year-olds, a public school. It is the oldest continuously operating school in the world. Classes have been going on every year uninterrupted since 597 CE.
Hell yeah. How cool if you get to go to school there.
I know, that's wild. It's been almost 1,500 years.
That's amazing.
Of classes every year. Yeah, and that's all I got.
That's it. That's the end.
That's it.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Just kidding. Well, Daniel,
Mm-hmm.
what's the Lulu Marie equivalent for you?
I don't really want one.
Oh, okay. Well, that down.
I have family, like stuff like Daniel Boone, my mom calls me, but like,
I don't really love that.
I don't. Yeah, there's none that I want. Like, Dan's good.
All right, fine, Dan. Lame. Before I dive into my stories, I know we had 2 announcements up top, but I do have 2 more quick announcements in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you guys just not fast forwarding. Please listen in because you're going to be sad if you don't hear this first announcement. My first announcement is that next week on the show, we will be revealing the pre-order information for book number 6.
Woo!
Which feels wild.
Mm-hmm.
And just to acknowledge why it's a little bit later this year, last year we heard a variety of constructive criticisms and feedback that the pre-sale date and the actual delivery date were just too far apart, and the announcements for the on sale were too far from the actual on sale. So we've condensed it,
Okay.
and that's why you haven't heard about it yet. And so that's the deal. We think that we streamlined the process. We'll be sharing all of it next week. It will be super fast, super easy, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Books on sale in August. more information coming.
Yay.
Yay. And then just another quick reminder that by the time you hear this, because we're recording this many weeks ahead of when you're going to hear it, we'll probably be about 5 weeks from kicking off this year's 2025, I don't even know what year it is, summer camp. So if you all of a sudden have the time off or the funds to be there, you can still get tickets at badmagicproductions.com. Tickets will no longer be on sale a couple weeks before camp happens. So basically, hurry up. Go get them.
Yeah.
Don't miss your opportunity.
Because camp's in September, right? So
Camp,
it'll be like by the time they hear this, it'll be a couple months before camp, but it'll be less than that.
It'll be a couple weeks, not a couple months.
No, they're going to hear this in July, right?
Yeah, how would that be a couple months before summer camp?
Because August is the next month, and then September's the month after that, too.
Well, it's the first weekend of September. So by the time you guys hear this, it's going to be 5 weeks,
Fair.
I said.
Okay.
5 weeks before camp happens.
Wow, that's crazy.
I know. Bada bing, bada boom, bada dang.
Yee.
This year felt like it was so slow, and then all of a sudden,
Speeding up.
It feels like when you're on like a trip and things get really slow, and then it goes boom.
Yep.
So there we are. Okay. Dan.
Yes.
No nickname.
Yes.
Do you have your Layla ready to go?
I do. I got a blue Layla.
Blue Layla. Well, let's take Blue Layla to see what red door, yellow door is.
Ooh.
Hello, King and Queen of Bad Magic.
Hello.
I want to start by introducing myself. My name is Kitty, and I only recently started listening to your podcast a few months ago, and I've been hooked.
Thank you.
And a few months ago could be years ago now, because remember, we dig through old and new stories alike. I worked as a pastry chef over the summer, and after a coworker turned on an episode one day, I got used to waking up each morning at 3 a.m. and turning on your podcast before starting the day. Your spooky tales keep me alert and very awake during the early hours of the morning. I want to share a story that's been long forgotten until recently, when I thought I saw something out of the corner of my eye that sparked the memory of this chilling experience. It all began with the game Red Door, Yellow Door. It's a common game for kids to play at sleepovers. I think a few years ago it became a trend on TikTok, which is likely how my siblings learned it. If you're unfamiliar with the game, it starts with one person sitting cross-legged on the floor with a pillow in their lap. This person is the guide. Then, the player will lay their head on the pillow, close their eyes, and raise their arms up in the air. Your eyes have to be closed for the entirety of the game. Once you're ready, the guide begins to chant, red door, yellow door, any other color door, red door, yellow door, any other color door, over and over. If there are other people in the room, they will be chanting this too. When the player begins to feel themselves slipping into a trance and they can see themselves either in a room or several doors in front of them, they lower their arms. That's the signal for everyone to stop chanting, and the game begins. The guide asks questions, which the player will answer. Some of those questions might be, are you in a room? How many doors do you see? What color is the door? If there are doors, the player is supposed to go through one and narrate what is happening. The game ends when the player wakes up by opening their eyes. There are other rules to this game that aren't necessary, but they are recommended to keep in mind for safety. Some of these extra rules include leaving a room immediately if it's full of clocks, as clocks can trap you forever, or ending the game if you see a man wearing a suit. Another one of these rules is to avoid interacting with any people you may find in the rooms, as they might be evil or try to trick you. There's other advice to follow, which can help from becoming trapped. Anyways, moving on. I was about 15 or 16 when my older brother and younger sister wanted to play. I was a good kid and I grew up in a religious household, so I was always afraid of anything that seemed evil. My church didn't particularly teach anything about demons or even the devil, but they highly encouraged staying away from anything you were uncertain about or made you feel uneasy. Regardless, I was never too good at overcoming peer pressure. My sister sat on the ground and put a pillow in her lap. I laid my head down and raised my arms up into the air. After a few minutes of chanting, I didn't feel anything. We tried again, and the same result. I sat up and I told my siblings this game was stupid. Nothing was going to happen. They used that exact logic against me, and we decided to try one more time. I put my head back on the pillow, and within 30 seconds, I found myself in a dark space with 2 doors. I don't remember what colors they were, but my sister instructed me to pick one and go through it. I opened one of the doors and began looking around. It was such a strange phenomenon. To be able to feel myself exist and move around in a new space, knowing that my physical body was just lying there with my eyes closed. There wasn't anything notable in the first room, so after looking around for a bit, I nervously went through the second door. This room was nearly empty, but the walls were a pale cream color that made me feel uneasy. I felt myself slowly creep into the room, and when I looked over to the side, my heart nearly stopped. There was a figure that looked similar to a person crouching in the left corner away from me. It looked the way I would imagine a shadow person to look like, but it was different. Instead of the typical dark emptiness that most people would describe, this figure was pure white from head to toe. It had no eyes, but I could feel it looking right at me. It looked very tangible, like something I could touch or something that could touch me. Fear took over my body and my eyes shot open. I tried to keep myself from crying and immediately told my siblings we were done. I panted for a few minutes trying to calm myself down. I was terrified. I had been so skeptical before and hadn't expected to see anything at all, much less some human-like creature. Eventually, I told them what I had seen. My brother played it off as if it were no big deal, suggesting I made myself see it. Regardless, they stopped bothering me to play that game, and we hadn't talked about it since. The thought of that thing haunted me for months afterwards. It would randomly pop into my head from time to time, and just thinking about it would make my heart pound and my skin crawl. I haven't seen it since, but it does make me wonder what might have happened if I continued playing the game. Your friend and fellow peeper, Kitty.
Thank you, Kitty. I don't want to look at my computer just to distract you, but is it called the back rooms, that one like area of the web? We've shared a story there in a while where it's like,
Yeah.
This story like reminded me of what they call like liminal space.
That's
I
right.
think. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's just it is such a. I don't understand fully why it creeps me out, but it does.
Yeah.
And just I've never heard of a game like that. I could picture playing a game like that if I was a kid and brought up. It's super creepy. Like what, red door, yellow door, and then what was
Any other color door.
other color door. Yeah, and chanting it over and over until you're supposed to see doors in your mind, which I guess could be like, power of suggestion. But
Sure.
But even if it was just power of suggestion, that's pretty trippy.
Yeah, it made me think like, are these kids playing this game innocently enough, but then like accidentally hypnotizing people and like
who
not
came up with this?
like not understanding the power of hypnosis, not even realizing that that's what they're doing by just repeating the same thing over and over. Because that's what a hypnotist. Thank you. That's what a hypnotist does, right? It's like,
I don't know.
Like you're like tracking something left and right, back and forth, and from what I've ever seen, I've never experienced it in real time, they're saying the same thing over and over. It's usually like,
getting very sleepy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It also makes me think of like EMDR therapy, which like has a certain sort of hypnotic element kind of to it, where it's like you're focusing in on one thing. So in that instance, you're focusing in on a trauma and you're trying to remove the trauma from your brain. You're trying to create new neural pathways. So it's like, like it's all kind of in that same space where we don't totally understand it, and it's just far enough out of our depth of understanding, out of our reach that it's creepy.
Yeah, it seems like kind of dangerous, if like you could come up with a game that teaches kids how to hypnotize one another and truly access their subconscious. That doesn't feel like something that you should be like just kind of like messing around with casually.
Right. And I could be totally wrong, but it's just a theory.
Yeah. Have you heard of a game?
I did not know that game. It made me think of Light as a Feather, Stiff as a Board, which is what I played as a kid growing up at sleepovers. And we would convince ourselves that somebody was levitating and,
Oh, yeah. I never played that one, but I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, we have a big family trip coming up. I think we should get all the kids together. You, me, your sister and brother-in-law. I think that's like a good combo. And we should play Light as a Feather, Stiff as a Board, see what happens.
Okay.
See if anybody levitates.
All right.
Who's the lightest?
Yeah.
It won't be you.
Oh, man.
No, I don't think you can float.
I don't think so.
All right. Well, I have one more story if you're interested.
I am.
Okay, let's go. My name is John, and I'm a newer fan of the show, and I want to share an experience that happened to my wife and I when we visited New Orleans. Bear with me. I'm not much of a wordsmith. I assure you, John, you've done better than you think. Back in 2014, my then girlfriend, now wife, planned a trip to New Orleans to celebrate my 30th birthday. We love scary movies and paranormal shows, so we ended up booking our stay in what was considered a very, very haunted hotel in the French Quarter. I mean, what the hell, right? New Orleans has the reputation to be all sorts of haunted, so we thought it would be fun. We flew from New York and headed to the hotel. It was definitely a little bit more run down than the pictures online had led us to believe, but the location was great, right in the heart of the quarter, so it didn't really matter to us. During the check-in, the concierge gave us the song and dance about how the place is believed to be haunted and a rough layout of the neighborhood. Places to see, other places to stay away from. We finished checking in, freshened up for dinner, and headed out. As we were leaving, we noticed a ghost tour stop right in front of our hotel with people taking pictures of the balcony attached to our room. Definitely weird, but also cool. We grabbed a great meal at a small local spot and spent the night listening to live music on Frenchman Street. Awesome start to the trip. When we arrived back at our room, it was late and we were beat. We sat out on the balcony, smoking our last cigarette of the night, recapping all of the great things we saw already. We joked about the ghost tour, stopping at our hotel, laughing that the only ghouls in this room were our tired, partly drunk asses. My wife hit the bed like a ton of bricks and was out like a light fairly quickly. I was still kind of amped up. I turned on the TV while changing for bed. I sat on my side of the bed, took off my watch, placed it on the nightstand. Nothing out of the normal. I started to take off my shoes when the hairs on the back of my neck began to raise. What was this all about? I thought to myself. I locked my eyes on my watch that I had just put on the nightstand. I don't know why I did this, I just did. I proceeded to stare at my watch until it slid all the way across the nightstand and then fell over on the floor all on its own. I didn't see this happen out of the corner of my eye. I saw the entire event unfold. I heard the friction of it sliding. No fucking way that this just happened, I screamed in my head. I'm a general contractor, so the first thing that ran through my mind was that the floor, or possibly the piece of furniture, wasn't level. I spent the next 30 minutes trying to recreate what I saw, but I couldn't do it. I stood there befuddled. I shut off the TV and went to bed a bit confused. I swore to myself I wasn't going to say anything to my wife because she would absolutely bug out and want to leave the hotel, and there was no way we were going to find another hotel to stay in at the last minute. Morning rolled around. I woke up around 8 a.m. from a solid night of sleep. I felt great. My wife looked tired, but I chalked that up to the drinks we'd had the night before. We pulled ourselves together, grabbed breakfast from a cafe across the street from the hotel, planning out all of the spots that we wanted to hit that day. Jackson Square, Cafe Du Monde, the cemeteries. We even rented a seaplane and took an aerial tour of the entire city. Absolutely gorgeous. We finished the day with some hurricanes and more live music. On our walk back to the hotel from the bar, my wife brings up how she had an absolutely horrible night of sleep and she was beyond tired. She asked me if I was going to stay up late again tonight watching TV, and if so, to keep the volume low. Now, I distinctly remember turning the TV off before I went to bed the night before. I even put the remote on the nightstand right next to my watch. She went on to tell me that around 4 a.m., she had finally had enough. She said the TV was blaring and that she asked me to shut it off, and then the TV turned off. I chuckled and said, "Oh, yeah, couldn't sleep." Blatant lie, but I had to. Now I'm creeped out, but I'm trying to dismiss it. Maybe some sort of frequency got crossed and the sound was from another room, or maybe my wife was having a vivid dream. Who knows? As soon as we walked into the hotel, the night concierge waved us over. He proceeded to ask us if we were going to watch TV late at night, if we could keep the volume down, as they had had complaints from one of the rooms next to us. I mentally crossed vivid dreams off my list of possible explanations. But still, it must be something that could be explained. We went to our room, smoked our last cigarette on the balcony, and called it a night. Internally, I was having a mini panic attack. What the fuck weird shit was going to happen tonight? We shut everything down and crawled into bed. I was preparing for some shit to go down, but nothing happened. We both fell asleep quickly. Anticlimactic, I know. However, throughout the night, I had dreams of being sick, really, really sick, and having trouble breathing. It was like I was in a hospital, but not really. The lighting was dull and dim, and the only thing I can remember from the dream was a female voice reassuring me and maybe praying. I woke up the next morning feeling a bit off. Usually when I dream, it's not very structured and I don't remember them in any great detail. This particular dream felt like it lasted forever. It also felt as though it had a timeline, just some odd shit. After waking up, I was expecting my wife to say something about weird things happening in the night or maybe the TV being loud again. But nothing. Nothing at all. She was a ball of sunshine that was ready to go out and explore some more neighborhoods and soak in the culture. The only odd thing of note that morning was my wife couldn't find her favorite lip gloss that she takes with her everywhere. We looked high and low to no avail. But, what the hell? We were not going to let a little lip gloss ruin the trip. We headed out and had an amazing day full of oysters and music and exploring. We loved every minute of it. Day turned to night, and we caught the New York Rangers Montreal Canadiens hockey game at a local bar before calling it a night. My anxiety was picking up on the way back to the hotel. We made it back, prepped for bed, and cranked the AC. It was extremely humid that day, and we had it with the heat. The AC was struggling a bit, but it was doing the trick. We closed everything down, and it was off to La La Land. I had an extra drink before we left the bar to ensure a solid sleep. No weird dreams, no nothing. Or so I hoped. I drifted off to sleep and slid right back into the dream from the night before. I was back in some sort of dully lit room, struggling to breathe and coughing. I kept hearing this woman's calming voice. I had no idea if she was speaking English, but the tone was very assuring. I could swear I heard praying, but I couldn't make heads or tails of it. I felt a hand wiping my forehead. I grew more concerned with my struggle to breathe, and I was super hot, like that bad fever kind of hot. I was covered in sweat. My brain was telling me this was a dream, but another part of my brain was less calm and more concerned about what was going on. Then I snapped awake. I was staring at the back of my wife's head as she was snoring up a storm. For a second, I was relieved, like, thank God I'm out of that fucked up dream. Then I noticed I was burning up, covered in sweat and chills. I reached over to my wife, thinking that maybe the AC crapped out, but she was cold to the touch. What the hell was going on? I felt a strong pressure in my lungs. I reached over to wake up my wife. I was shaking her aggressively, but she was not waking up. I knew I was awake. I could feel her body. I could smell her hair. I was in our bed. I could move, but I was freaking out. And that's when I heard it. Humming. Softly behind my left ear. I felt someone rubbing my forehead and my hair rhythmically. I officially began to panic. Someone was in our room messing with us. My heart was pounding. I was breathing so hard. Then, the blankets on the bed started to move up over my body. I had opted not to use them because I had been so hot, but now I watched as they first were pulled up over my legs, pause, then over my waist, then pause, then up to my shoulders. I was watching this happen. My one hand was frantically pushing my wife, trying to wake her up. I felt her body move with every push, but she remained asleep. The only logical explanation was that someone was in our room and they were there to hurt us. I convinced myself the only way I was going to get the upper hand on this sick fuck was to jump out of bed at them and start swinging. I'm a pretty big dude, so I thought I'd probably have a fighting chance as long as they didn't have a weapon. A big what if, but fuck it. I threw the covers off my body and launched at where I thought this person was. Nothing. Not a goddamn thing. I ran to the lights and turned them on. My wife woke up pissed and confused. She watched me check every possible place in the room and on the balcony where a person could possibly be hiding. But nothing. I was a wreck, shaking and covered in sweat. The only thing I could muster up as an explanation was that I had had a night terror. I stayed up the rest of the night watching TV with the lights on. The next morning, my wife asked what the hell had happened. I simply left it as a really bad dream. We started packing the next morning, and as we did, we gathered the last of our stuff. I heard my wife say, that's weird. I found my lip gloss. It was right there next to her bag, just standing there vertically. By now, I was like, fuck this, let's get out of here. To this day, I have never told my wife the full extent of this story. When I think about it, I get the chills. I haven't looked into any history of the hotel or any other stories surrounding it. To be honest, I'm too scared to. I don't want to relive it. I didn't believe in ghosts before. I always thought paranormal stuff was scary in a fun way. This changed my mind. Well, that's the whole story. First time putting it into words and probably the last time. I'm definitely not going to sleep tonight either. Love the show. Can't wait to hear more episodes. John.
That was great. That was like the ideal story, like a hardcore ghost hunter, like a paranormal enthusiast.
Uh-huh.
That's what they hope for when they go to New Orleans.
Yes.
Take a ghost tour, stay in a haunted hotel, pick the room where something clearly happened based on the ghost tour, people stopping under the balcony and directing people to talk about their room specifically.
Yeah.
Like clearly, like there's a history to that room, and it's like what John went through. I bet there's so many people listening who are like, that's what I wanted when I went to New Orleans.
Yeah. I didn't get it. What hotel were you at? What room?
Oh yeah, so many different things, like the obviously like starting. I love the little start of the activity where watching the watch slide across the nightstand.
Uh-huh.
And I love that John is a general contractor.
Yep.
Because my mind went to obviously you're not going to bring like what do they call them? Like a bubble level.
Oh yeah, level with you.
Yeah, like with the little bubbles on each side and then the middle there to truly test the levelness of like a piece of furniture or the floor.
Uh-huh.
But I just picture like trying to do your best approximation of like how to figure the same results out without that.
Yeah.
And just like if I had not that I'd have a ruler either, but something like that and be like, wait a minute, does this look right? Or
John frequently travels with a pocket level. So actually.
Right. Or like, again, not that I'd have a marble, but I'd want to have that. Something like, what is going on in this room?
Yeah. A great thing to use in those instances is like a pen. If you take this, like the part that connects to your shirt, like anything that's completely cylindrical.
Yep.
Like if you have like a lip gloss or a chapstick or anything like that, Yeah.
So
it's like you can't do it with a coin because it doesn't stay upright.
Or maybe like a ring.
Uh-huh.
Like a man's wedding ring.
Yeah, maybe
if you could take that off and just test it from different angles to see how it rolls across, something. Or I guess a woman's wedding ring, just obviously one without jewelry on it.
Well, yeah, one with no stones and one that's thick.
Yes.
Yeah, like metal. Like yours wouldn't work because you just wear like a silicone band. I think it would just tumble over.
Oh, yeah, totally. But yeah, and then the whole TV thing, like the escalation. And then that fourth night of just like, God, did somebody get like sick and die in that room? The whole like rubbing this forehead, the sweats, all that stuff.
I figured, he did not disclose what hotel they stayed at, but I figured.
I think I know where you're going. Yeah,
that it's like probably nuns taking care of like TB patients.
Yep, like there was a big outbreak of like Spanish flu or tuberculosis or like oh my God, I've talked about it so many times. Tuberculosis, they would send people, sanitariums.
Oh, yeah.
They'd have buildings be sanitariums. Probably not New Orleans because they actually though, now that I'm saying that, because they would send people to dry climates like Arizona, Colorado.
Oh, yeah, because that was part of the problem is that it was so wet. They thought that was like, yeah.
So it'd probably be an outbreak.
Yeah.
Like again, like yellow fever, Spanish flu, something like
just
that.
Just anything, yeah.
Yeah.
Some sort of pandemic, hit and then, like nurses. What's the other word? Not a sanitarium. There's like another word. Like a convalescence.
Oh, yeah, where people convalesce. Yeah.
Convalescent home.
I don't know.
Is that where the word coven comes from? Oh man, my brain's doing crazy leaps right now.
I don't know.
But but there's this like there are some famed former nunneries that for sure they sent people there to the nuns to be taken care of. So I was like,
they died.
Yeah, I'm like, I bet I know where you were.
Like a hospice type care place, yeah.
Essentially, yeah. But yeah, I loved that story.
Me too.
Yeah, I like how it built every night. And I mean, honestly, John, I don't think that ghost was there to hurt you. She's probably just trying to bring you back to life.
Take care of you.
She noticed that you had what she thought was like an illness, but really you just drank too much. And she was trying to help. You had one too many purple drinks.
Oh my gosh.
Ugh.
I've never actually had a hurricane down there, but maybe I'll have to try one of these times.
Yeah, because you love a fruity.
Yep, so I might as well try it.
Oh, yeah. It's like a fruit punchy kind of. Mm-hmm. I don't care about those kinds of drinks.
Yeah, I like sugar.
I love sugar, but like I don't. Frozen drinks are like hard on my system.
Oh yeah, okay.
So even when we get purple drink, I have to share it. When are we going to New Orleans next?
I don't know. Not soon enough.
Love that sound. Love that tone. All right. Do you want to do some spoopy shout outs?
Yeah. You want me to start?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I would love to thank the following Annabelles for supporting us on Patreon and just being such a huge part of what we do here. Sebastian, Stephanie Von Epps, Kayla McPherson, Gianna Romero. Just her name. I just recorded yesterday this episode on Murder Incorporated, which was like, it's all about mafia stuff.
Uh-huh.
And it was just this litany of nothing but Italian names, and you fall into a rhythm.
Uh-huh.
And like nicknames and everything, but I just want to be like, Tommy Maserati. Like I want to say immediately fall into this Gianna Romero. Sorry.
Beautiful.
Just in my head. Justine Caskell, Chahalis Rodriguez, Hakuna Mayaya, Ivy or Ivy.
I bet it's Ivy.
Yeah, Ivy it's I-V-I, so probably Ivy. Scarlett Knowles, and I love this.
This is literally my all-time favorite Patreon sign-up name.
Yep, this Patreon sign-up name is no spaces, Did you know Patreon has a long character limit for names? Well, anyway, fun fact, 7 years ago from 2025, acid was first synthesized Gettysburg reference.
I love it.
Yeah, well done.
I was laughing so hard when I saw it. I was like, because I make you can download it into a CSV file.
Yeah.
And because of that name, it caused the A column to expand so far. And I was
what's happening?
Yeah, I thought there was a formatting error. And then I saw it and I just immediately started laughing. I even messaged them, was like, yep.
Well done.
You win. Best name ever. All right. I have a few Annabelle shout outs myself.
Yes.
Thank you to Tony G814, Caleb V, Rescued Hearts, Shanna Myers, Courtney Allen, Ashley, aka Crazy Cat Lady, Staff to Hades, the Supreme House Overlord. Which I messaged Ashley and I was like, oh my God, if you just replaced Ashley with Dan and Lynze and Hades with Penny and Gigi, it's like animals are the rulers of the house. Make no mistake. Dolores Riggins and Kayla Cannon.
Nice.
Nice.
Any spooky shout-outs?
Yeah, I do. I have a few. To Tessa from Tessa. Happy birthday to me. I'm ready for a year of badassery and magicalness. Let's make it happen.
Cute.
To Kelsey from P. Happy birthday. 16 years of being the best friend anyone could ask for. You're stuck with me forever. Cheers, princess.
Aw.
And to Mel from... My God, I can't even speak. To Mel from Mel. 2025 has been brutal. From battling back from your stupid choices to dealing with so much abuse. If what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, then you're a fucking beast. Things are finally looking up.
Aw.
Hang in there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. You got to be your own biggest cheerleader.
True.
You really do.
And that is our show. Thank you for continuing to send in your personal tales of terror to my story at scaredtodeathpodcast.com. You can email us for everything else, info@scaredtodeathpodcast.com. Thanks again to Logan Keith scoring today's show. Thanks to Heather Rylander organizing the My Story emails. Thanks to book editor Drew Atana polishing and preparing listener stories for book number 6. Thanks to Molly Box for finding the second story I shared this week. I was able to find the first. We are on Facebook and Instagram where we post pics and accompany episodes and more at Scared to Death Podcast. We also have a private Facebook group called Creeps and Peepers, full of fellow horror lovers and moderated by the all-seeing eyes who keep the online community having so much fun and being just a welcoming place.
Yay.
Enjoy your nightmares, Creeps and Peepers. Hope you were scared to death.
Bye.
If spirits threaten me in this place, fight water by water and fire by fire. Banish their souls into nothingness and remove their powers until the last trace. Let these evil beings flee through time and space. Evil may pass through, but hath no home here within, scared to death.
Bad Magic Productions.
You have your quirks, you know? And if
Me? Did you just indicate that I'm quirky?
Yeah, you're very quirky.